obviously are the concrete guys, right? So all I'm going to do is just in brief, in 15 minutes, show you the stuff that we've got, tell you how it works, and all that jazz. So I'm going to go over it. I've treated. I figured this is the best thing because we can put some stain in here. This thing's getting cut out, and it's a nice palette for us just to work with it. It's just standard concrete, nothing special. Also, we have I've got some replay done up on the asphalt up there too. The asphalt's there as well. Just to give you guys a snippet of information. Concrete really only has one issue, and the issue is pretty simple. When it gets wet, it absorbs water, right? It's a sponge. Everybody thinks concrete's hard and all this stuff, but the main flaw in it is that it absorbs water, and then freezing, thawing, molecules, staining, things get into it. It's a rough surface. That's why it's hard for you to clean it, and that's why it gets spalled. That's why all these things happen to it. And so ideally what we're presenting here is the products that we have coming out of Texas that have been around for 30 years that don't let anything into the concrete. Okay, we've got lots of different levels of concrete protection, but the biggest thing and the most important thing about all this stuff is that it is bio-green. It's made from natural products. Okay, aquatic life lives in it. It's not toxic to you. It's not toxic to me. We can apply these products without respirators because it has 0 VOC. And the other thing is, in 20 minutes, it's dry. You can walk on it, drive on it, do whatever you want to do to it. Okay? So I'll show you some of the main 3 that we've got. I'll show you just a quick application, how simple it is, and I'll show you the stuff that I've applied. And then after we do that, you'll be able to see it work, how it works. We'll clean this up, and then we'll run through just all that sort of thing. The one thing that is most important though before we start is these are permanent products. Okay, when we seal this concrete, whether we seal it with a U-fix, which is our U-fix is the most versatile of the products because it gives you an instant result. Okay, it's got some silicone-based molecules in it that helps it repel water, so it gives you that beading action. Okay, but again, it's permanent. So permanent being, if you're trying to put acrylic, not acrylic, but if you're trying to put an overlay or something on it, it's not gonna adhere to it because it's blocking it. Okay. The Pavix, which is what we generally recommend. We recommend for your sidewalks. Okay. Non-colored concrete product because the Pavix has 2 crystals in it: hygroscopic, hygroscopic. Okay. And what they do is they give you a bit of a vapor barrier, but they just give you a different kind of blocking so that it really doesn't let anything in. Now, we like that on commercial sidewalks because it doesn't bead. It just gets that little bit of water in to activate all the crystals so that we don't get in wintertime when we get melts. If you've got uneven concrete, with the U-fix, what we're finding happens is it beads so good that you get an oscillation because the water doesn't go anywhere. And everyone, you know, that surface area of concrete, if you know how it works, will absorb probably 8 to 9% of the water on the surface, right? And it doesn't really let it oscillate. Well, the U-fix is like, if you've got a nice grade, all the water goes off of it and there's not an issue. If you've got something that's uneven, we're finding, as much as it's great because we protect the concrete, but that little puddle just sits there and it freezes. You can kick it and it's gone, but it also gives you the possibility if there's a dip or something, that because it has to evaporate. It's the only way it goes. Right. It can't get soaked in. And so everyone's like, what have you done to the concrete? I said, it's not going into the concrete. That's the problem. Your concrete's uneven and it's just sitting there.
Just puddling on top.
Yeah. Whereas with the Pavix, it's just having that little bit, it doesn't let it oscillate and it helps it kind of evaporate just a little bit. But for the most part, like for snow removal, I mean, all these testings for these products were done in Edmonton. Okay, we picked one of the harshest environments that we could throw at because of the salt and all these things. And for snow removal, it's great because the ice doesn't stick to it as bad, right? Because what it's doing is, and how it works is the crystals, when it's dry like this, dry up. They're made from grape husks and they just sit there. So the first thing that we're doing when we're treating these concretes is we're strengthening the concrete because we're filling the voids up with little crystals. So your normal 20, 25 MPa concrete might be 30 MPa because we basically took the air bubbles out of it, right? That's just the density thing. So we densify that surface. Then what happens is when anything liquid hits that surface, these crystals just pop up. So they pop up and that's it. And nothing can get in, right? Concrete's just rough. It's like a You know what I mean? And all those little spots are blocked. It doesn't get in, the water sheets off. That's how they work.
So there's no way for the ice to adhere to it. So
No,
like
they do stick to it. I don't want to say that it's like Teflon.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that it's probably 50% easier. And that was just like a byproduct of, we're sitting here and we're like, well, look at the ice, especially on the U-Fix, because the silicone, it just off it goes. But the main reason, that's not the main reason why we want to say treat. The main reason is because of spalling. A lot of what we do with Alberta infrastructure and all this other stuff is about infrastructure protection. Because when we protect this stuff and you don't have to replace it every 15 years, and we can make it last 50, 60, 70, 80 years, because when concrete can't get penetrated and you're not getting staining, and you're not getting spalling, you're not getting cracking, you're not getting deterioration, basically that slab has to deteriorate from underneath. And so if that's happening, there's other issues, right? I mean, we think.
Would it be then, is it, you're saying it's feasible to do on sidewalks?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like for you guys in commercially, and again, we have been doing a lot of work with the city of town of Grand Forks, right? Because they've been adopting a lot of the stuff that we're doing. We're finding that the Pavix is better, and the Pavix costs a little bit more, okay? Because you got two, but it goes like the square footage. It does like one pail will do like 1,500 square feet, where a U-Fix will be 1,000. So that part kind of works out. The danger with the Pavix is if you've got any kind of colored areas for towns and stuff, you like to keep things simple. If they go and put Pavix on colored concrete or something like that, the crystals are great, they'll work. But once you get crystals in there, it might make the concrete go white because it sees the crystals behind the color. And then they're like, well, how do we fix that? You don't. So what we always say for colored or for vertical, like say you have a bad wall that gets graffiti all the time, or effervescence is coming through it. It's just one of those things that keep appearing. Clean it off, and then on a vertical application, you want to put U-Fix. And then what that does is the kids go and tag it, you'll be able to pressure wash it off. Because the paint doesn't get in the cracks, right? You can get the first little bit off, but it's that last little bit that's a pain in the butt.
So would you do one coat or two coats or something like that?
Just one coat. And that's it, right? For U-Fix, what they say is the silicone can break down over 5, 6, 7 years, okay? So you might come back if you really want that beading action, or say if you have an area that really gets a lot of tagging and you're pressure washing, the way you gotta look at it is those crystals still can get pushed out and wash out on that surface, right? But this stuff will soak in, depending on the porosity of the concrete, up to 3/4 of an inch. So you're still getting a whole bunch of protection. It's just that very little bit on the surface that might need, and so a re-application on something like that is basically a quarter application, because it'll repel itself, right? Like how much can you put back on? You'll spray it and it'll start beading, and like, oh, that's it.
So if you have a sidewalk, say that's been there 5 years, there's no color on it, there's no, and it's still in decent, you know, you can put this stuff on
the
here.
Pavix, as long as it hasn't been, as long as it hasn't been sealed, like.
Okay.
If you've had acrylic seal or something on it, we got to make sure that it's all gone, because we can't penetrate through it.
Exactly.
But 4,000 psi pressure washer will take any acrylic off, right? And we always say, pressure wash and clean it.
Right. You're gonna. Yeah.
The benefit, what we're doing is we're not doing a film, so we can penetrate through dust and dirt and particles. We don't really worry too much about it, but we want the surface clean. So does it need to be absolutely spotless? Not really, but cleaner's always better, right? So they say give it a pressure wash, you know. What we're finding on the colored stuff is because this is a penetrating concrete, it doesn't protect the color, so it's not UV protected. I know the guys, especially Mike Collins from Vertical Creation, was having big problems with the saltwater pools, because he has to put acrylic on, because he has to protect the color, right? You pay all this money, and then what's happening is, and if you know acrylic, you're putting it on the surface, that concrete's rough like my fingers, and it soaks in, right? And they say, well, that's the soak in. It doesn't actually soak into the concrete. It soaks into the crevices. That's all it's doing. You stuff it, you break that little bit on the surface, the spot water comes in, and now they're just popping, right? Because over that first winter, the moisture now gets underneath the acrylic. It's got nowhere to go.
It's like the popping when it's popping. Yeah.
So we did a test last year with Mike. He says, I said, Mike, I've been telling him for 5 years. I said, we can solve your issue. I said, if you'd use the U-Fix as a curing seal instead of a curing seal, because the U-Fix will, when you spray it on a 3 or 4 day old concrete, will dry slowly. It'll hold the moisture in when you initially put it in, and as it dries, it'll slowly let the evaporation out so it cures properly. So we said, let's do a test. We put Pavix, U-Fix, and nothing, and then we put acrylic on top of it. And the reason why we did that is down at City Center, we put hydropress slabs for Doug Pinion. He wanted to change all of downtown, and he's like, I got this great idea at City Center, let's put all these slabs in. And so we did that. And then he's like, okay, so we got to protect this slabs. I says, yeah, this is the stuff, because we don't want to put acrylic or anything down. It's the city sidewalk, or you'd be crazy. So we went in and we sprayed it with Pavings. I sprayed a colored concrete with Pavings just because I'm experienced enough to know when to stop. Right? Like, you can do it as long as you're careful, because Pavings really is the best product, because you get both the crystals. And it just means you've got that one extra step, and they don't get the sheeting, because hydropress slabs are pretty level, but you have the little cracks and stuff, so you want that little bit of water to go through. The day before the presentation, on the Sunday, he went down and looked at it, and when we put that paving, we spray it, it darkens everything a little bit, but it doesn't make it shiny. It's not to show it off, it's to protect it. He didn't like that, and he went and put acrylic on top of it. And so then we were like, oh,